Good afternoon, Modified 95. You know where we are. We're at the home base. We see the Honda banner. You know we're in the right spot. Today is a follow-up. I finally got onto getting help, getting the GSR block onto the engine stand. It needs to come back off the engine stand because I didn't realize that even though we could turn the nuts and the bolts around that hold the little arms on the engine stand, I can also show you that in a second. We need to take the flywheel off so we can get the crank out because we feel like the crank is the issue, is what I'm told. So hopefully my block is still good and I can just give it a little cleanup and reload it and get a new crank to it. But I'm also gonna try to procure another block as well from a good friend of mine. So let me show you this. All right, here we are moving on from last time. As you can see, we got the cams out. Everything is put together. I got a lot of stuff in bags and separate bags so that it does not get lost and it can all be put back together. The head's over here, it's looking good. We come over here, issues from last time is this is loose, like very, very loose. Like one of the bolts is missing, which maybe it just, I can see this bottom bolt, if you guys can focus on that, is completely backed out. Don't know how that happened. I hope it's not stripped out in there, but that's an issue. Rather, the engine works and deal with the post mount. But I was saying about this part, because this needs to come off, just because we can get it on here with the flywheel on doesn't mean that the flywheel is not totally in our way. So it'll have to come down, but I don't have help for that right now. I don't want to risk causing any more damage than already happened internally. Still not 100% on that, so we probably nailed it down. When I drained it the other day, and even in my oil pan today, there is no metal shavings in the oil, which makes me happy. So that makes me feel like the head's good because things are not getting pumped through. So I'm gonna take off these bolts. I'm gonna take off this bracket. I'm gonna take off both these brackets. I hate these things. And we're gonna see what's inside of that. And let's do it in time lapse. I mean, I feel like everyone's changed an oil pan gasket at least once, so that should be no big surprise to anybody. So I'll set my phone up. I ordered a new tripod. It's not here yet, but when it is, I will definitely make use of it. But let's get going to time lapse. All right, we are back at a time lapse. I took all of the 10mm nut and bolts out of this. I'm just gonna start tapping it. I was cleaning off the spider webs that this was sitting on the ground outside. Well, on like one of those little furniture carts, and what I think happened is like spiders got on it, if they weren't already there, from how long it had to sit for a couple days before we even got that motor out. And it sat a couple weeks, maybe even a month, just on the driveway. No one messes with stuff. Luckily, out here in the middle of nowhere, I also took off those little brackets right there. Those were 12s, these are 10s. Silicone, very important, because there's nothing on here, and it's still holding on. And my oil pan is very beautiful. It is not, what's what I'm looking for? It's not scraped up. A lot of people like scrape up their stuff by having super low cars, and my car's low. It's not that low, luckily. This is not the right tool for this, but it won't damage it because I'm getting right between the gasket and the block. I need a screwdriver, but there's one. Oh, there's exactly one close to me because it's like I prepared to shoot a video today. Okay, those coming off slowly but surely. I'm hoping not to find a bunch of extra metal in here. Come on, baby. Oh, there. Yeah. It's not bend those. Oh my God, it looks like confetti in here. All right, let me switch the camera. I feel like a 49er, but in the opposite, because I'm not excited for what I'm panning for here. Here we're looking down here. So definitely no sponsorships, but Felpro, definitely repping this. Had no oil on the outside, so nothing was leaking out, which is good, because you know these B series like to drink oil. Like I said, let me get in there. So that color, whatever that big piece is, that's a big piece of, oh no. But those all look like bearings. I'm just guessing. You should have help. You should have someone that just tells me what things are. But yeah, they all sunk to the bottom. So this thing shut off like instantly. So I don't think they went into my fancy oil pickup. Let's just get on the ground because we're down here already. All right, nothing too tragic. I gotta take this, I wanna say windage tray. There's a lot of verbiage I do not know. And this will probably come off so I can see inside of it. On the floor here, This is a D series, so I'm being very careful not to drop parts into these parts to mix up these D series parts with these B series parts, even though there's probably a lot of commonalities. But if you can look in this isn't, obviously, we just saw the oil pickup is still attached, but this is the one from the D series. This one blew. This one had a hole straight through the block, and you could see all the metal that was inside of here. So I'm just hoping that my B series one is not like that. So let me get this oil pickup off. Let me get this windage tray off, right? And then we will hope for the best. That I don't think we need to film. Just a couple of nuts and bolts. I hope that everyone got my minor reference panning for gold. In California, that was a big thing of what we learned in U.S. history, because it deflected from a lot of more important things we should have learned about what happened in our country. But whatever. I think this thing is called a girdle, and it supports all the 180 horsepower that run through this thing with, like, I don't know, what's it, like 197 foot-pounds of torque. I know it's not a lot, but I enjoy it. I don't want to just pop this bad boy off yet. I want my housemate to get here, so he should be home soon, so I can continue this video, right? So I kind of tried to see if I could move any of those rods to see which one was, like, maybe a little loose. There was no play in any of them, so this has to come out. It's all coming out anyway, but we'll get down to the crank and that pulley will come off. All the bolts I had right here, I bagged them up. So these are the windage tray bolts. These are the oil pickup bolts and nuts. There's like 2 nuts over here, bolts on this side. I dropped one, and all that B series stuff I said I wasn't trying to drop stuff into, but I grabbed 2 that seemed like the right ones, but I could still go through it more. But I think one cheap bag is worth the peace of mind of not having to search for all this stuff when it goes back together. So this is like all the bottom end stuff. So as I look in here, this thing did its job. Not sure if my phone's good enough to focus in there, but see, like, there's not really any dirt in there. That's all just little metal shavings. I see a big one right there. Right, now if this was gold, that'd be great. I found a bunch of gold, but since it's an engine part and probably a bearing, it's not great. This makes me sad, but that's why we're here. That's why we're fixing things. And yeah, so I'm just not confident about taking that lower bit off. I just don't want to cause, like I said, any more damage. I don't really know how to put an engine together, so I thought, learn how to tear one down, then come over here, put this one back together, and if everything works and spins, then try to rebuild this one. Okay, I'm back. There was a short interlude. We put this thing in X Games mode, which means I pulled the pin, turned it a quarter turn, put the pin back in, and this just gave me, there we go. Oh, a lot of exposure to what's going on down here. So I'm gonna sit here. I'm gonna throw this into time lapse again, because that allows you to see a lot of what's going on. I'll find a good angle. New tripod is finally here. And I'm gonna take off this girdle, this block girdle. I'm gonna take this off. There's no particular order in which these need to come off. It's not like the head, where the head bolts go on and off in a certain way. So this is gonna come off, and then these rod caps are gonna come off. Bing, bing, bing. Well, these are rod caps. These are different parts. This is another like stabilization piece that holds the crank in. And I think there's 5 of those. 2, 3, 4, 5 that come out, and of course 4 of those caps. So here we go.
Good deed goes unpunished, but no mistake was trusting at all. No good deed goes unpunished, the second one was letting down my wall. No good deed goes unpunished, shame on me for caring about you. No good deed goes unpunished, it's all dead to me and I am through. No good deed goes unpunished, for first mistake was trusting at all. No good deed goes unpunished, the second one was letting down my wall. No good deed goes unpunished, shame on me for caring about you. No good deed goes unpunished, it's all dead to me. Been so hard to...
Okay, we cut away from what I was going to do, and my housemate came out, and we got the flywheel off and the rear main seal, and we bagged up those bolts and the rear main seal, because it still looks good. It's just got a little grease on the outside, and we put those away so they didn't get lost. And then we also, and you see in the time lapse, this happened real quick, the crank pulley and the crank pulley bolt, and we didn't lose the key that goes right in there. It's important. So this timing belt cover is going to come off real quick off camera, and then we'll go back into time lapse and we'll start taking that bottom stuff off. So I was also made aware that this was not full X Games mode. This is full X Games mode. It was like Tony Hawk Pro Skater before, just slightly turned. This is limited by the thermostat. Protect the thermostat. I could probably get this, check this off. I could probably get this more turned. But also stuff we did off camera that happens was, come over here, we took off the oil pump, and that was, I think, 1, 2, 3, 4 10s and 2 12s at the bottom, and there's like a pry point. You just bump it and it comes right off nice and smooth. And the oil pump looked good. So on that, we can probably just change out the gaskets once we open it up and make sure it's good. A little tensioner comes off. That was just a 14, and that actually had to come off to get that last 10 because I couldn't even get the socket in place until that was out of the way, and the little spring comes off with it. My post mount came off. I think these threads are messed up. I think that we think that we might have put that on because of how it looked, but I think that we didn't put it on. I think it came on there and we never checked how tight it was, and it was probably hand tight, and it worked its way out. And because it only had 2 bolts, and you could see on this one bolt, like all the aluminum still wrapped around it, like it just pulled the threads out with it. This hole still seemed like it's good because nothing was in it, and this one, so the whole weight was on these 2 and not spread between the 3 evenly and tightly. So now you got a final place to set you. You got the good light of the sun setting. Back into time lapse. And I hope this time I'm making this video, I found some audio tracks in my band, so hopefully I can use those without getting any copyright problems, because the songs are not copyrighted, but I did write them from start to finish with my friend doing guest vocals on there. Yeah, so we'll see how it goes.
To even keep track of the countless times that I've dealt with your disillusioned lies. Now my heart couldn't go out to you if I tried, 'cause pigs like you will only sling the mud, and you want me to be as dirty as you. I battled to get out of these filthy trenches and leave behind the hills you put me through. No good deed goes unpunished.
All right, so we went to time lapse, back in real time. We were able to get all those out. We put them into a box labeled 1 through 4 so that the right rod cap went with the right rod. And then we tapped them out with the wooden part of a hammer. So just really gently just getting them to slide out. We'll probably also turn it over and look at the cylinders, but as we can see in here, so a lot of the bearings were messed up. So here, let me give you an example. These 2 were overlapped, right? So it's 2 different bearings that are now on top of each other and then somehow getting pinched in the end. So like a lot of bad happening. So we can go ahead and throw these away. This is more of a normal one. So look at the size difference. Like that one, that's 2 of them. It's the size of like one that's less worn down. But the girdle's off. We just put that in that D series valve cover just to keep them from getting lost. So those are the bolts. They're like head bolts, like on the bottom that hold that girdle, because I have to go so far through, and they were all torqued down. So I had to start with a breaker bar, then just go to my impact, my electric impact, to get the rest of the way out. Yeah, so pistons are all together. So we're gonna pull the crank out. So these are coming out. So all in all, things aren't looking that bad. The block seems usable, but everything else is being a little weird. And I also came to a discovery. So I'm looking at the little oil squirters. I have 2 different sets. One was given to me, one that I bought, and the ones that were given to me are way bigger. So I think they might be from an H22, but the ones that I bought were way smaller. So I think they are the right one for the excuse me, the build over there. All right, so we're gonna pop this out real quick, and then we'll kind of give it a quick look over. All right, so everything out of here, and there is no damage. You can probably see, I'm sure you'd have to feel to believe it, but the cylinders are all like super smooth, so none of the problems up there. Took all the bearings out, and all these are clean under there. Everything's smooth because those bearings were all still good. So we're gonna flip this thing over and we'll look at it from the other side. All right, bam, back to normal mode. Yeah, and everything up here is good. Just needs to be wiped off from, we took it outside and dumped it so we can get all the rest of the liquid and oil out of it, because we had to flip it over anyway. So we did that outside to not have to clean it up in the garage. So the last thing we're going to do in this video is we are going to look at the crank. So we'll come back, we'll look at the crank, and I really want to make like a giant hot tank just to clean this thing out, and I think it'd be really fun. So if you see a homemade hot tank, you know I did it. If not, those be putting engines back together. All right, so we got the crank out. We saw that one bearing that had been like smashed together, but otherwise, this looks pretty good. Each of these ones, besides having a little metal crud in it, a good example is that one. So those passages. What's that?
Rod.
Rod what?
That's where a rod bearing goes.
That's where the rod bearing goes, right? Everyone knows that. Well, yeah, well, now we know. So rod bearing goes here, and that was gunked up. That one's gunked up. This one, which I think is cylinder 1, piston 1,
Scored.
it's really scored. So you can see that it's really rough. It's not smooth like the other ones. So hopefully this can be repaired. You know, they can do some sort of machine shop magic. Well, I'll find out, see how much it's going to cost. Probably more than a whole new engine. It's kind of hyperbolic. But yeah, so there we go. So I have closure. I know what happened to this motor, why it stopped. You know, and it could have been a lot worse. So like the block still looks beautiful. The head still looks good. Everything just needs a nice deep clean. And then it can all be slapped back together once we work out this crank situation. I would really like just to replace it and then send this one away and see what they can do. But I already have this thing back together before they even send this back. Thank you for coming along on this journey. So we finished up, we're tucking all this stuff away. As much stuff as we can that was important, delicate little stuff, we tried to bag up just so it would be together. So either we lost the whole assembly or it's all together. So everything's safe and all together. We're gonna set the crank over by the pistons and the rods that are all together, and then we'll deal with the crank situation, and then you'll probably see some videos of us putting it back together. Something I really wanna work out is on my wagon. I know you guys are craving some wagon content. There is a Nissan Pulsar, and it's got these really cool looking taillights. And so what I want to do is I want to pop the taillights off the wagon, and then I want to tape them off very carefully, and then I want to spray them the color that the whole wagon is going to be, so that it'll have that effect. If you don't know what the Nissan Pulsar looks like, look it up, look at the taillights, see how like rad and futuristic they are, and I'm going to try to bring that to my wagon. All right, until next time. Modified 95 family, I'll see you guys.